You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. It's great to have you today on this Total Wellness Tuesday episode, where we are going to go over why you are losing your hair or why a loved one, a client, or someone that you know is experiencing thinning, drying, brittle, or hair falling out. So I want to go over all of the different reasons why today. I want to explain to you the science in terms that you'll be able to use in your own life. So once you understand the deficiencies that you may have or some of the toxicities, we can get into how to rebalance those to be able to keep your hair healthy and strong. So let's get started. And I want to take you through how the hair actually grows on the head. So we're talking about hair on the head. And what I want to go through right now are the three main phases. So you have to understand is that all of us are going to lose hair. We could lose 100 plus hairs a day, and that could be normal. And here's why. Our hair goes through three different phases. There's basically a rest phase and a growth phase. The problem is some people's rest phases, where it's falling out and not growing, is getting to be a little bit too long, where their growth phase is shortening. And there'll be lots of other parameters as well that I want to explain today. So hopefully today will be the show that you will now understand why men and women are losing their hair. So the first phase is this, okay? This is very important. This is the growth-based phase. We are looking at growth. The growth phase is happening approximately with 90% of all of your hair follicles, right? So this is important. So you're losing about 10% of your hair, right? But we always have that 90% regrowing back in, where the hair is being lost as well. So it's always being replaced. We're looking at a growth phase for each follicle, sometimes called the papilla, is between about 2 and 6 years for that follicle. And then after that, so this is very important, it's going through then a transition phase. Let's call it a little bit of a rest phase. And the hair is no longer growing. It's just stagnant. It's staying there, hanging out, and then what happens is, and this only happens for about 5 to 6 weeks, there'll be a shedding phase. And this is where the hairs are actually pushed right out of the follicle. And as they're pushed out, it will make way, as long as everything is balanced, for new hair growth to start to come through. So remember, there will be new hair coming behind it, but there is a certain phase where it's about 10% of your hair that is falling out. Now, why though, if hair is always meant to regrow where hair was lost, do some people have thinning hair? Is it more dry and brittle? Or where the hair falls out and never grows back? So it's important to look at this. The first one to just get out of the way before we go with more of the more intricate ones is male pattern balding. And it's very interesting because we know the science behind it, but if we look at traditional Chinese medicine for just a moment, there's a reason why they believe that some men lose more hair in the front than in the back of the crown of the head, okay? So what they're saying in their words is this. The higher the fats in the diet, the proteins in the diet, the more anabolic, meaning in our language, modern day science, the higher testosterone gets, the more conversion there will be to what's called dihydrotestosterone, also known as DHT. Now, we know that certain herbs help to block testosterone to dihydrotestosterone. If you look at a product like our prostate support, you can see herbs in there like saw palmetto and many others, pygeum, that help with this testosterone to DHT response as well as to estrogen. But it's very interesting because traditional Chinese medicine does not name it as testosterone or name it as dihydrotestosterone. What they're saying is anabolism. That's what testosterone is. Very interesting. Now, for the front of the head, now there are medications, not that I would use or recommend, but there are medications that also help with the blocking of hydrotestosterone. Now, but remember, we can also look at our diet. So now we look at the front of the head. What if you're losing more hair towards the front of the head? And again, this is mainly going for men right now. We're going to be getting to men and women in a second. If the hair in the front of the head is starting to be lost, we say that it's a diet that is too catabolic or a lifestyle that's too catabolic. Too much exercise and not enough protein and healthy fat. Very interesting. A lot of people where they go very high plant-based and there's too much stress in the body, and they're not enough kapha body type, meaning they're more vata or pitta, can lose it on the front of the head. Interesting to look at it. Very, very interesting. And if we move over now, so that's why it's always a balance between anabolism and catabolism. Now, in Ayurveda, it is the pitta male type that typically loses their hair. And so I can tell you, when a child is when a child's a child, 5 years old, 6 years old, which one's predominantly the pitta type, especially if I get a look at the parents as well. And I can say, well, this child is going to have a higher likelihood of losing their hair. Now, if you know that ahead of time, not that I don't know that everyone really cares either, there are things that you could do to go about that and help that as well. Some people are going to be naturally prone, men-wise, to thinner hair. If you're the kapha body type, you typically have a thicker head of hair, and you actually have more hairs per follicle or more hairs on the head total. Your hair is typically wavier. It's thicker. It's a little bit more oily. The pitta hair is fine. It doesn't have a lot of curls. It's not wavy. It's thin. It's more flowing. And then for the vata type, it's typically a little bit more curly, a little bit more dry, a little bit more brittle. So if we move on, though, now to the science behind all of this, we know now for men and women that if you, and this is important, if you think about this through pregnancy, when you're in pregnancy, you may have had elevated levels of estrogen and progesterone, namely estradiol and progesterone. And a lot of women during pregnancy, they said, I had such amazing hair. Like it was very lustrous and it was glowing and it was thick and it had a lot of volume. Well, you had a boost in hormones. And then about 2-3 months maybe after birth, you actually started to go through this phase where you lost a lot of hair. Now, a lot of women, we come to us and say, I'm losing a lot of hair. Well, this is actually part of, though, that natural rebalancing process where your body knows it's no longer pregnant. The hormones begin to recalibrate between estrogen and progesterone. Important to look at it, but also a giveaway as to why women into their 30s and 40s, their hair begins to thin. And if we look at it, their levels of estrogen and typically progesterone begin to drop. And this becomes very pronounced during menopause. So if you're suffering from thin hair into your mid-30s to later 30s and 40s and beyond, it can be because of lower levels of estrogen and progesterone. Now remember, estrogen is not always the bad guy or girl in the equation, right? It needs to be balanced with progesterone, yes, but you actually do need healthy levels of it. If not, as you move into menopause, you're going to be losing more hair than you would most likely like. Your hair will be overall thinner. It will be a little bit more dry and brittle, which leads me to my next point. Because many women, men as well, but many women are dealing also with thyroid-based issues. And I'm talking about hypothyroidism, whether it be Hashimoto's based or just general lower thyroid, hypothyroidism, which means typically a TSH above a 2.5. Some say above a 2, and I would say yes if your T4 and T3 are not adequate, meaning T3 above a 3 and T4 above a 1. So, and I can explain the lab in just a moment, but with hypothyroidism, women will often see drier hair, drier skin, for sure. They'll see thinner skin, yes, and they'll also see thinner hair. Part of it is also circulatory. You're not getting that blood to pump through the body. That will lead me to my next point in just one moment, but you need to get that blood flowing. But also, you need to also get the metabolism where it should be. And the thyroid is one of those regulators of metabolism. You need to make sure that your thyroid levels are adequate. I have many shows previously on what to watch out for toxins that affect the thyroid, as well as 2 minerals that if you don't have those, you'll have a low thyroid. Crucial, so important to look at it. Now, one vitamin I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you about with thinning hair is vitamin D. It's almost impossible to talk about your immune system, your hair, your skin, weight loss without talking about vitamin D. Vitamin D is, I'm getting to the point where I'm saying it's more of a hormone and more of an enzyme than anything else because it's used not as a vitamin, it's used in hundreds of enzymatic transformations in the body. Vitamin D is what it's enabling people also to keep balanced hormones, for sure, to deal with stress. We'll be talking about that in a moment. But also, vitamin D is what helps create new hair follicles by also initiating the anagen phase. And if we want to go into the growth phase, we need adequate levels of vitamin D. But I've told you just even on last Friday's review, the Friday review before that at least half Americans are low in vitamin D. And this goes for the entire world, by the way. But also, those are people who are just extremely deficient. What about all those people that are functionally deficient in vitamin D, which pretty much goes for 9 out of 10 people, at least? Because I'll tell you this, in my practice, maybe 3 out of 100 are within range, unless they are supplementing or they're getting sun exposure, which most people aren't. They're not getting sun exposure more days than not during the week, and not just on their face, on mostly their full body. So vitamin D is crucial, and when we want to talk about energy and circulation and red blood cells, we need to talk about 2 main players as well. The first one is ferritin. Now, a lot of people get their iron levels checked, but they do not get their serum ferritin levels checked. Do that. Ask your PCP, not just for your TIBC, which is your total iron binding capacity, but you want to look at your ferritin levels, maybe even your trans ferritin levels. And that will give you a better picture of, are you right in the middle of that range? Because you should be. You really should be, even just a little bit above. And that means that your body has enough iron, usable iron, to be able to add oxygen to those red blood cells. Well, if your red blood cells and your body cannot get enough oxygen, cannot gather enough iron, they will be happy to break down your hair follicles and use that for the rest of the body. Now, ideally, you don't want that, but your body's trying to always maintain equilibrium, right? That is why all of these symptoms that we come in with always have a reason why. Now, does your PCP know all of these reasons why? No, but that's not their job. They're not trained to know any of this. It exists. It's a whole form of medicine. It's just not conventional medicine, which they studied. That's not their fault. Their job is to keep you alive. So if you have a disease, you have something that's literally could cause you to die, they're going to help you with that with medications. My job is to make sure that we're not just treating the sick, that we're actually helping those people to get well. So instead of sick care, we want to practice true health care. That's what it's all about, right? So think about it. If you're deficient in iron and your body needs iron, it will break it down from another part of the body and steal it to use it for more critical matters. Because your hair is not really as critical as other functions in your body, such as transportation of hemoglobin or oxygen. Super important. B12 is another one of those vitamins, okay? I mean, I can almost name every vitamin, but B12 is very specific. And the reason for B12 is being able to provide more of that hemoglobin and oxygen to your red blood cells. Now, these red blood cells, though, also work in reciprocity. So make your red blood cells happy, and they are going to feed your hair follicles with nutrients and blood flow, which means life, right? You want to bring oxygen to the scalp, which is why giving yourself a head massage gently, don't pull the hair out, but gently will enable you to bring more blood flow to the hair. Try to do that every morning and every night. At night, you can actually massage in, and I did a podcast on this, check out the essential oils for your hair, but you can use a base of sesame oil like they always used to do in Ayurvedic medicine, which has copper that's great for the hair. It's antimicrobial, it's antifungal. So you can use that organic first pressed sesame oil in a nice dark bottle, massage it right into the head, maybe use a little bergamot. You can use other essential oils in there as well, or just the sesame oil, and give yourself a nice little head massage, right? And that will help you as well to bring more blood flow to the skull, to the skin right around there that houses all those hair follicles. So you want it to be nice and strong. You want it to be nice and light and tight. So one big thing they talk about in traditional Chinese medicine is when the skin of the scalp gets too weak, too loose, it starts to not be able to receive as much oxygen and blood flow and nutrients. And the hair, because the skin's not even strong enough, begins to fall out. This is why adding some advanced collagen support to your smoothie can be very, very beneficial. I will link that up today. I'll link up a couple things today at the show. Head on over to stephencabral.com/1334, and I will put the links in there for many of these things. I'll link up activated B complex. I'll link up a liquid B12. I will link up a plant-based iron supplement. I do not recommend any oxidized forms of iron. Be very careful the iron you're putting in your body. I also have many shows on food-based forms of iron that you can check out too. I will link up vitamin D. I will link up, a very important test. If you want to test any of the things that I just spoke about, your thyroid, your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone, the T4, the T3, your vitamin D, you can do all of that with a thyroid adrenal hormone lab, and it can be done right at home. We can ship that to you, or you can work locally with an integrative health practitioner. You can work locally with a functional medicine doctor that specializes in these labs as well. So the choice is always yours, but I want you to know that you have the choice. So many people out there today don't even know that they have the choice to be able to figure out, do I have low vitamin D? I don't know. Do you have imbalanced estrogen progesterone? Nobody knows until you check, right? We're all guessing until we decide to test. That's what it's always about. It's one of my favorite phrases. My life changed when I started doing functional medicine lab testing. I didn't know I had these strange food sensitivities. I tested, I found them, right? So that's very important to me as well. I do my hormone testing twice a year. That's what I choose to do. You don't have to, but for sure, get it evaluated at least once. Get a plan, get on that plan, get it fixed. All right, I'm going to give you one more. And this one is as important as any one that I've already listed for why you might be losing your hair or that it's thinning or falling out. Okay, extremely important. Besides diet, you need to get your omega-3s, you need to get your essential fats, you need to get your protein, you need to get your carbs. You can't cut out any of those. You can't cut out any of them. You need a balanced diet, right? You need a balanced diet. But here's one thing that trumps everything else, and that is stress, namely cortisol. It's very interesting because I was studying Ayurvedic medicine for a long time, and they kept saying that pitta, it's a pitta-based issue when you lose your hair. It's a pitta this, pitta that. It's the heat. And I said, what are they talking about? Like, what are they saying? What do they mean that a pitta type gets so hot that it literally burns off their hair? Well, I had to look deeper into this. I had to use a 21st century mind. And what I realized what they were talking about was this. Pittas can get a little bit more hot-tempered than other people. Now, since I have the pitta mindset, I can say that I'm part of that category. Now, I'm a somewhat reformed pitta, but if you get me going, I can get back into that category. And so here's the thing. When you are in that heat, that temper, being fiery, you are more in the fight or flight. And you are raising what? You're raising norepinephrine and adrenaline as well as cortisol. And now, finally, 6,000 years later, Ayurveda was already telling this, but just in a different language, right? So that's why Ayurveda is not being as studied today, because the language is different. But if you take the time, you've studied the modern science, and you study Ayurveda, you can understand they already knew. They knew, I just didn't know. I was not smart enough to be able to put it together. But then, over time, figured it out. Now I said, is there any research today that shows higher levels of norepinephrine causing hair loss? And lo and behold, there is. So what we have to do as well is control our levels of stress. And I know, easier said than done, right? We're all stressed, but how fiery and how hot-tempered do we get? Because for me personally, typically, I don't fly off the handle like I used to in my younger years. And I did. Without a doubt. I mean, I was born with that fire. My parents tell me all the time. And you know what? I can kind of see it in my oldest daughter. She's fiery. There's no doubt about that. Now, just like me, she's not necessarily that pitta body type, but she has the pitta inside of her in terms of the mindset. That's why your mindset dosha or body type can be different. Mindset type is different than your body type, right? Very, very different. So what we want to do is we want to use our ability of self-awareness to realize what our triggers are, to also realize when we're about to get stressed or about to enter a stressful situation, take a quick step back, enable us to reframe the situation, and we're able to do that over time. Not all at once, but over time. We're able to use breathing. We're able to use a yoga practice. We're able to use meditation. We can do things like binaural beats. We can just begin to center ourselves. And as we do that, we will produce less or not elevated levels of cortisol. Again, this can be checked on a thyroid adrenal hormone lab. It's an amazing lab that will show you many of these markers. You never have to run the lab, but if you want the data is there for you. I want to give you a quick recap right now of all the different reasons why people are losing their hair or their hair is thinning for both men and women. And this includes dry, brittle hair. So we talked about, in the beginning, about male pattern baldness, and we talked about testosterone being converted to dihydrotestosterone. This is the same thing that also affects men's prostate. Now keep in mind, women that go through PCOS also have an issue with testosterone converting to dihydrotestosterone or elevated levels of testosterone. This can be corrected, okay? It can be corrected. Don't think that you need to live with that for the rest of your life. And what we do is we never work on the disease. We don't treat, cure, or diagnose disease in natural-based health. What we do is we look at the underlying root cause issues that will be causing those manifestations in the first place. We also spoke about how lower levels of estrogen and progesterone can cause hair loss or hair thinning. And this affects women as they start to get into their 30s and certainly when they move into menopause. Again, this can be corrected. The next thing we spoke about was thyroid. And we talked about how lower levels of thyroid, even high levels of thyroid, non-balanced thyroid, can cause hair thinning, can cause dry, brittle hair, as well as the skin, poor circulation, lower levels of energy, lower levels of metabolic rate. That absolutely does affect the hair. So make sure your thyroid is optimal, okay? Make sure it's optimal for your entire life, for your mood, brain fog, weight loss, etc. We also spoke about how vitamin D is crucial with moving the hair into a growth-based phase for so many different reasons, but that's just one of those. Another one is vitamin B12. Well, we want vitamin B12 to help feed the hair follicles with oxygen-rich red blood cells. And to get some of that oxygen into those red blood cells, we need iron. Natural iron, you can get it from vegan-based sources like pumpkin seeds. Check out my podcast on that. Or you can get it from animal, fish-based egg yolk sources as well. Or you can use a natural supplement that is not an oxidized form. We talked about B12, we talked about iron, we talked about vitamin D, and we also can't forget stress. Understanding that they spoke about this 6,000 years ago, but higher levels of fight or flight, the hormones that cause fight or flight or that are caused hormone spike from fight or flight also cause hair loss. They also cause graying of the hair, which we'll talk about on another show. So hopefully today's podcast was helpful. I really wanted to walk you through the process, which body types are most prone to it, what you can do about reversing it, lab tests that you can run, and I will link up activated B complex, B12, vitamin D, daily thyroid support, iron-based supplement, whatever you want. Remember, it's there. So it is there. You're able to figure these things out, and I absolutely wish you the best. Of course, ask us any questions you may have. And as always, if this show is helpful, please do feel free to pass it along to anyone else you believe it could serve. Are you ready to heal yourself and then go on to heal others? If so, the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute can help you discover proven functional medicine protocols that blend the best of 7 different healing disciplines from around the world. I personally share with you the exact handouts and protocols I use in my private practice that enable people to get well, lose the weight, and live longer, stronger. I want to pass this information on to the next generation of health coaches, and that is exactly why I created IHP. We are the future of the health coaching industry, and the skills and knowledge you will learn will make you an in-demand certified health coach anywhere in the world. Although we have many medical professionals taking the IHP certifications, no experience is necessary, and half our members have no previous health certifications. At the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute, our motto is a health coach in every home. Our goal is that you take this knowledge and then share it with family, friends, loved ones, your community, or in a practice where you create a career you love and can be proud of. The global IHP community is filled with some of the most kind and caring people in the world, and we can't wait to welcome you into our world soon. For more information or to set up a discovery call with one of our IHP Health Coach graduates, simply head over to integrativehealthpractitioner.org.